Hi everyone, I'm Rayana. I'm super excited to be sharing what we'll be doing on the release stage. And today I'll update you on some of the steps we're taking to improve the releases capability in GitLab. Just a quick overview, we are part of the release group under the CI/CD section. So this focuses on release management and release orchestration. Release orchestration gives us the ability to create and coordinate complex releases, particularly across projects in the most efficient way. Our current maturity level is minimal and we are aiming for a viable. And releases are a way to track deliverables in your project, and our approach is more on the artifact of the release itself and embedding the checks and steps into it rather building a complex workflow. So quickly, my goals for today are to share with you the results of the revisiting of UX scorecard for releases. I'm going to highlight some of the opportunities we identified through research and expose the proposed designs and solutions based on the research and the findings and also the next steps. Cool, let me just dive in. As I mentioned, this effort is based on UX scorecard for releases, and for this job to be done, we are working with multiple personas that share common responsibilities and steps in a diverse workflow. Our main persona identified is a release manager, but pretty much anyone in a project or in an organization can be responsible for releases. So mainly software and DevOps engineers. And our job to be done is when tracking important deliverables in my project, I want to easily create and manage release entries so that I can provide package software notes and files for people to use. This was our initial job to be done. And the first score after conducting heuristic evaluation was an F. The first evaluated experience did not allow users to create or update releases using the UI, so that's pretty much the whole job to be done. People could only do that through the API. So based on the heuristic evaluation, I focus on the most painful areas of the workflow. And these areas involve creating a release using the interface, making a clear differentiation between tags and releases, making releases easier to find, associate important data with it, and also general UI beautification. And I proposed a series of recommendations, and those were the implemented ones that touched the UI or touched UI UX. But we also did quite a lot of improvements on the API side as well. So yeah, so the goal for rescoring the experience baselines were to conduct 3 user interviews with both internal and external customers responsible for release management and orchestration of the organization, because this will provide valuable insights and remove the subjectivity of the heuristic analysis that I performed the previous quarter. And also the intention was to evaluate our hypotheses. One of those was that the small solutions proposed at the initial recommendations did affect the experience in a positive way. So just to see positive results for the implementation and the design proposals. We also wanted to learn from different personas and understand how users are creating releases with GitLab and other applications. And we wanted to identify any roadblocks users would encounter when creating and updating a release using the UI, as well as identify what other UI and UX improvements are needed to support users when creating and updating a release. So I'm just quickly fleshing out the user journey. It didn't change a lot. I'm not gonna dive into details here, but the steps from last year and this year are pretty much the same. Users still could not create a release through the UI. They were able to edit it, but not create. And there are still a lot of struggles. The frustration persisted. And you can see that in the mirror board. Based on user input and another round of heuristic evaluation, we did have a few positives. We concluded that people do use releases at least partially with GitLab, but they expect it to be more powerful. Participants also found easy to edit a release. They immediately recognized the action button that we added on the interface to edit the release item. and they're overall satisfied with that experience. And they're also super happy with the docs. Marcin, our tech writer, worked on improving the docs experience for releases. So thanks so much, Marcin, that was awesome. And moving forward, users would love to see, for example, more best practices on creating releases. So how to name it, and how to use releases with issues, etc. As learning opportunities, we found out that not all tasks can be completed when users are trying to create a release using GitLab UI. We already knew that, but it was nice to get so much context from users and understand different workflows. There are still a lot of manual work involved that requires context switching. So you have to go back and forth through the UI and the API to fully create a release. Tags and releases are confusing. So if you're not familiar with the current application, you need to create a release through the tags page. So you need, if you want to edit a release, you need to go to the releases page. People are not super happy about that. Notifications for releases are hard to find and can be more powerful. People want to customize notifications per release type, or for example, decide who should be notified before or after a release is created. And the last point was that there was little support in the UI that would link to relevant information about releases, for example, in our docs. So the scores stay as is, an F. People still cannot create a release. So that's half of our job to be done. They can edit, but they cannot create. And yeah, fear not, we are working on make it better. And the ways we are doing that is by following the example of the package team. So Ian, I think last week showcased how they're doing the think big discussions, and we are already adopting that for the release team, so that we can understand how we can take this data to enrich our user experience. We're meeting regularly with product and engineering to discuss the future of release management as a whole, and what we can do as a team to enable our users, and just in general discuss ideas on how to prioritize those efforts. We're also following sync and async review of the design proposals to identify low-hanging fruits and break down the effort into smaller deliverables for dev. And from there, after our ideas collected, we dive into some more interactive design solutions. And let me focus now, let's see, yes. So from this whole experience, there's three main insights. We had a bunch of different insights, but there are three main ones that were already the initial assumptions from the job to be done exercise, but after collecting this data, we're really pushing forward. The first one was that, well, all participants expected to be able to create a release through the release page, right? No one wants to be jumping from one tab to another or different section in GitLab. This is a super small change. It's pretty much adding the new release button on the release page. So introducing this call to action so that users can, for once, create releases through the UI. And the second insight was that participants expected to be able to fully manage the release item with GitLab, including, but not limited to, change, for example, the tag version, the release title, release notes, associate milestones, assets, you name it. So first key design change is to support all available data that we already support on the API, but bring this to the user interface. And we have an epic where we discuss async. How do we want to do that considering the technical constraints? In this case, we have two different forms. We have the release and the tags form. And we are considering to bring this to one single way of managing release tags. So release and tags would behave pretty much the same. And the third insight is that participants mentioned that they want to have the ability to associate milestones to a release using the application UI. But milestones are specifically important because they can help generate the content for a release. So for example, release notes, a change log, the number of deployments in a release. There's a lot of details. And we are partnering up with Plan, so hi Alexis, on a bi-weekly cadence to understand how releases should be assigned to milestones or issues. and how milestones are being utilized for planning. And we come up with the insight that releases will be a time box that customers can select and make releases mandatory. So you can select a tag name from a pre-populated list of issues and MRs and work from there. So this is an ongoing effort that will help us connect to our product vision and will provide capabilities for releases across GitLab as a whole. So that's super cool. And yeah, where we're headed. The next steps, we'll continue using research findings to help prioritize upcoming deliverables. I'll be working on breaking down the design decisions into smaller chunks and to identify why those changes are valuable. We have an epic to track those improvements, and our goal is to make releases viable by 13.0. So that's close. And this also aligns with one of our UX OKRs that will validate the category maturity for release orchestrations. And finally, you're probably going to see me again here with scoring the job to be done next quarter in showcasing the learnings to evaluate the experience grade. And that's about it. So I would like to thank you for your attention, and also a special shout out to Lori, as always, awesome helping us with the research. Nathan is our front-end developer. Jackie, our product manager, she's awesome. And Marcin that worked on the documentation improvements. And of course, everyone else involved. So yeah, if you have any questions, please let me know.
Again, this is great work. It's not a question, but I wanted to say it was great to see how you are taking the UX scorecards and really using that methodology to push the experience forward. And then hearing you talk about how you're working with the plan team to think about this as a larger experience that's not just siloed in your area. It's fantastic.
Yeah, thank you. It's very exciting to also have the process there to help us guide the improvements and guide our team to understand why do we want to make those improvements. That's super interesting. Cool. If no one has any questions, I'll stop sharing and pass to the next presenter.